It feels like we've had to wait an absolute age for the team news between the All Blacks and the Springboks this weekend. It is finally here, and everywhere I look on Rugby YouTube, the hype train has well and truly left the station. Everyone looking ahead to this game. So intriguing for both of these sides, and the winners and losers, the different trajectories it will feel they're on in this Rugby Championship. So welcome back to the channel. I'll go through the matchday 23s that Scott Robertson and Rassie Erasmus have named in this video, talk about the key areas and some of the interesting selection decisions. What do you learn from where these two teams are at the moment based upon the teams that have been selected for this game? Both of them, their biggest games of this season by a mile. For both of them, you could argue it will be their biggest game of the year, no matter what happens later on in this Rugby Championship or in the Northern Tour for these sides at the end of the year, just because they're the biggest rivals and it's at Eden Park. But I'll get into all of that. The thing that I find fascinating about this game is, you know, when you look at a match and you think, what are the key areas that are going to be so pivotal in determining where this game is won or lost? I look at this game and there are so many different things you can look at. You could talk about discipline, because that's been an issue for both of these teams so far. You can talk about their skill sets, which at times can be absolutely brilliant. At times in the first two rounds have really let them down. We can talk about the set piece, and I think in particular, in terms of both of these team selections, that's clearly pivotal. And we can talk about the aerial battle as well. The point is, I've really struggled to nail in on just one or two specific areas that are going to make the difference. There are so many areas that are crucial for both of these sides. It's going to be a really interesting contest. This is the All Blacks team. I'll start with the home side. And All Blacks fans, does this team selection give a real reflection of where the All Blacks find themselves at this moment in time under Scott Robertson? In that there is a real mix of experience, exhibited by Ardie Savea making his 100th appearance, and then a development sense. Kyle Preston is going to get his debut off the bench. Fabian Holland, who I think has been brilliant, by the way, is on the bench. I don't know. It just feels to me that maybe this is kind of where the All Blacks are at the moment. They have some absolute quality players. On their day, they can be brilliant, but they are a team that is developing. Look at Simon Parker in the back row as well. But I suppose I've mentioned him already. We may as well start with Ardie Savea. What an unbelievable rugby player. We knew this already. That's nothing new. But 100 caps for your country, one of the best players on the planet, one of the best players to watch on the planet, and he has been for a long time. He almost single-handedly dragged New Zealand along during the period under Ian Foster when they were really struggling, where he was still so consistently world-class. 100 caps this weekend, a performance from him, you'd imagine, is going to be pretty key. In terms of the team, Ethan de Groot, Cody Taylor and Fletcher Newell in the front row, with Takiaho, Williams and Lomax coming off the bench. Don't know what you all think, but that is a good set of front rows. And I know that the Springboks are so strong in that area, so that battle is always going to be key, and it doesn't necessarily mean the All Blacks will come out on top there. They could do, by the way, because I think they've got enough quality there. But that's still real strength, isn't it? Real strength in that area. Scott Barrett, of course, continues in the second row. Tupu Vaa'i moves into the second row. They have experience in the second rows. Vaa'i, we've seen play in that back row. And Holland, therefore, coming off the bench. I mentioned it just now, actually. Fabian Holland, I think, has been really good at the start of his international career. I'm really excited to see where he goes and how good a player he can be. But him, kind of the impact off the bench, Tupu Vaa'i, Scott Barrett, your experienced campaigners to start the game and try and give you a platform and put down a bit of a marker. Simon Parker in the back row, another inexperienced guy, but I think has got a huge amount of potential. Ardie Savea to 7. I'd imagine a lot of All Blacks fans are going to be happy seeing him at 7, with Wallace Atiti, who every time I think of Wallace Atiti, I just think of that game at Twickenham, which I was at against England. What a test match that was last year, by the way. And he was just brilliant, Wallace Atiti. So on paper, it's a pretty formidable looking pack. Karifi on the bench as well. Benches could be key. Benches could be key. I'll get onto the Springboks. 5-3 split they've gone for, so no bomb squad as such, but you'd imagine they're going to get a big impact from the bench. Are the All Blacks going to get the impact from the bench that they want and they need in this game, in their forwards? Well, in the backs as well, actually, but in particular, the forwards. Starting pack, though, I think is really strong. So Finlay Christie is at 9, Roygaard is injured, Ratimer is injured. 9 is such a huge has such a huge question mark over it at the moment, I think, for the All Blacks. But I like Finlay Christie, Kyle Preston, what an opportunity, but you are probably missing number 1 and number 2, aren't you, in Cam Roigard and Cortez Ratimer at the moment. Bowden Barrett starts at 10. There are a couple of names in the backline that are nailed on. Bowden Barrett, Geordie Barrett, Will Jordan. Those are 3, I think, at the moment. Rico Ioane continues on the wing. But Amoni Narawa does come onto the ring. Sevu Reece is dropped. Does that point totally towards the aerial game, which I think is along the lines of what Scott Robertson has spoken about when he's been asked about that selection? Narawa is a better aerial option than Sevu Reece, and I think that is probably what is coming their way in terms of how the Springboks are going to approach this game. So that's the reason for his selection. Billy Proctor partners Geordie Barrett. Will Jordan continues at fullback. Damien McKenzie and Quinn Tupaia on the bench for the All Blacks. What do you make of that team? I still think, probably as I've said in videos recently, on their day, New Zealand are absolutely brilliant. They still have so many players in that team that are world-class, top quality. The issue is consistency, and I think that probably comes from the fact that there are plenty of players in this team that are developing, and it is a team that is still developing. But it's absolutely, I think, a team that is good enough to win this weekend, and this is who they're coming up against. For the Springboks, to me, this team selection from Rassie Erasmus points towards probably what we expected already from the Springboks, and particularly what we saw from them in the second test against the Wallabies, which is going back to basics, is going back to the tried and tested traditional DNA of Springbok rugby. It's Pollard at 10, and it's a pack that will compete for everything, and it's going to the aerial game. There are a few surprises in there. No Afalele Fassi, no Sneeman, whether that's on the bench or starting. Ruan Nortje is the man that starts. But I think this is a Springbok team that at this moment in time, they haven't been happy with their overall performances, and they are going back to what they know to, I suppose, essentially give them the best chance of winning and give them a platform to continue building upon. So to defend their Rugby Championship crown first and foremost, but also to build into the rest of the year rather than trying to expand that game plan. Be really good at what you know you can be good at, and then you can layer on everything else off the back of that. And to me, that's what this team selection kind of points towards, really. So Oxenchae, Malcolm Marks and Thomas du Toit in the front row. You could have gone Vilko Low at tight head, but frankly, whichever one of those players you prefer, they're still awesome options. It's a brilliant front row. Wessels, Venter and Lowe as your replacement options. As I said, with the All Blacks, I think that kind of battle in the front row is going to be really key, and 2 quality front rows going at each other there. Etzebeth was always going to come back in for this game. Nortje in the second row alongside him. What does that tell you? I think that is to do with the line out and the set piece, and how much the line out was better in that second test against Australia for South Africa than it was in the first. And I think that's why they've gone with that combination. I know a lot of people are going to be surprised in particular that Sneeman isn't involved. And then in the back row, Van Staden, Peter Steph du Toit, Sia Khaleesi. I think as many people thought it would be, I still think number 8 is an issue for the Springboks. I think Sia Khaleesi will do a good job there, but isn't necessarily your long-term option. You're waiting for that person to take the jersey by the scruff of the neck. We've seen Jasper Wiese is obviously played there. Haven't seen him in the Rugby Championship yet. But Sia Khaleesi at 8. On paper, it's still a really, really strong pack. And when you look at Lou De Jager, Quagga Smith, 5-3 bench split, probably takes me by surprise, because I just thought they'd go 6-2. Or even 7-1, which takes us back to that Twickenham game pre-World Cup in 23 when you had 7 forwards coming off the bench in one go. I did think they might go for go for the bomb squad essentially. Go for that bomb squad, which we know can have such an impact, and whether they would want that sort of statement in a game of this magnitude. In terms of the 9 and 10, Grant Williams, Andre Pollard. Williams continues at 9. Pollard, I mean, he is your guy. As much as Amani Libok or Sasha Feinberg, Zulu, who is on the bench, are brilliant players, I think really when the Springboks need it, it still is Pollard at 10 at this moment in time. And you could see why, by the way, against the Wallabies in that second test. Damien Dialende, Jesse Creel, again, tried and tested, reliable, top quality operators in the centres. Moody and Colby on the wings, and Willie le Roux at fullback. Fullback for Willie le Roux, I think, is perhaps the biggest surprise in that back line. You do feel like his time with the Springboks, and he's had an unbelievable career, 100 capper, is probably coming to an end. Does it come down to him being more reliable in the aerial game? We spoke about that for the All Blacks in their back three. Is that what Willie le Roux gives you over Afalele Fassi? Doesn't give you what Rassie does in terms of attack and counter-attack, but it's a different kind of skill set. Is that why he is there? And then Cobus Reinach, Sasha Feinberg, Ngoma and Ethan Hooker, the utility back, to complete the Springbok team. I think this game is going to be fascinating. I think it is going to be possibly one for the purists. I don't think it's going to be totally free-flowing. I think there's too much on the line in terms of the result of this game for both of these teams. I think it's going to be immensely tactical, which is why I think set piece and the kicking game and the aerial battle is such a focus in terms of their team selections. But I think it's amazing. I said it earlier in the week. The winners of this game, so many of the questions are kind of answered and put to bed. The losers, it's only magnified. It does really feel like there's a fork in the road for these teams. One's going this way, the other's going that way. One's going to be in prime position to potentially win the Rugby Championship. The other's going to be on the back foot. Really interesting weekend ahead. Interesting team selections from both of these coaches. What do you make of them? Let me know. Comment down below. Like the video as well. I'd love it if you hit that subscribe button. Get us up to 18,000 subs. We're not too far off now. So hit subscribe, like the video, drop a comment down below, and I'll see you in the next one.